The talking, nagging, lucha watching, puro viewing, indie supporting, drinking, cursing, son of a gun of a podcast. Join former pro wrestler and promoter Dave Dynasty and co-host Ike Isaacs as they talk wrestling and interview those within the business, bringing positivity back to pro wrestling. This is the Dave Dynasty Show.
Welcome to the Dave Dynasty Show. How are you today? This is kind of a housekeeping little mini episode of the Dave Dynasty Show. I'm going to tie up and wrap up a few things that I've been meaning to do here lately on some episodes and have kind of slipped through the cracks and I have forgotten. So we have just a handful, just a few questions that were submitted to me on Facebook that I'm going to get back to and respond. And we have a giveaway and a contest for you that I totally forgot that I said I was going to do a couple weeks ago. And but that's okay because this contest now is a little more relevant at the moment than it was then. So it is fortunate timing. But again, I hope you're all safe and well out there in this wild world that we live in at the moment. So let's get, I got 4 questions here that were submitted on Facebook recently that I meant to cover on the episode that was just released prior to this one. And I totally forgot to do the Q&A. A couple of these are older questions. I may have answered these in the past. You know what? I'm not sure. I jotted them down and they were here on my desk and I just unearthed them. Not really unearthed them, but saw them. And thought, did I answer them? But who cares? I'm going to answer them again. So let's start with those, okay? John Thorne on Facebook asked me, what was your favorite match to watch? And John, I've been asked this question many times. Of course, this is a pretty common question that people get asked when you talk about professional wrestling. And honestly, some of my favorite matches of all time, here's the deal. I'm a huge tag team wrestling fan, so I've always loved tag team matches. And more importantly, they're very dear to me, are all the Midnight Express fantastic matches from when I was younger. I was right at that right age and watching those. I've always been a huge Midnight Express fan and a Jim Cornette fan. And I thoroughly enjoyed and loved the Fantastics. And those were great matches. And of course, I love the Midnight Express and the Rock and Roll Express and so on and so forth. And singles-wise, I was always a huge fan of the Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat trilogy. And what was it? Was it 89, I believe? 88, 89? Those 3 matches are just unbelievable. Fantastic. I wish I could see some of the Flair Steamboat matches from the early 80s that are supposedly even better. But yeah, those are some of my favorite matches. Those are things that I go back to a lot and can watch over and over and over again. All right, and now another question submitted on Facebook. You can get your questions to me, by the way, on Facebook. You can either look me up, Dave Dynasty. That's all you got to do, just look up Dave Dynasty. And you can message me or post the question there. Or you can go on Facebook and look up the Dave Dynasty Show, and you can submit a question there. Or find me on Twitter at The Dave Dynasty. And again, submit your question there. And we will make sure we get it on there. If you're old school and you would rather email it to me, that is fine as well. You can email it to dave@davedynasty.com. And if we get enough questions to come in, we will start answering questions on however many episodes we need to. Once I accumulate a few, I can make that a segment on the show. But the next question is submitted by Dale Litton on Facebook. Said, hey, what is your viewpoint on backyard wrestling and its growing popularity with shows such as GTS and many others on the rise? I'm not sure what GTS is. If it is associated with backyard wrestling in any way, shape, or form, then I don't care to know what it is. Dale, here's the deal. I despise backyard wrestling. I despise the hardcore deathmatch wrestling. I know there are people that live and die by it out there. Maybe if somebody's out there listening right now, they love this kind of stuff. Not me. I hate it, despise it, wish it would go away. I think it's dangerous. I think it's pointless. I think it is just trash. That's my opinion. I completely hate it. And not everybody has horsed around in their backyard or on the bed or whatever with a backyard quote unquote type wrestling, right? When you're jacking around with your buddies and you're trying wrestling moves and you're doing things like that if you're a fan, and I get that. But to try to pass it off or any of this other stuff as respectable professional wrestling and respectable anything is just ridiculous, right? It is not professional wrestling. If you're untrained in doing it, you're not a pro wrestler. And if by any chance you are untrained and getting paid, that is ridiculous on all accounts, and shame on the promoters doing that. But hardcore and deathmatch and all that, that's not professional wrestling. That is not what I want. And it's just not what I will ever watch. So I completely hate, despise, and anything associated with it. Jason Amos, my old buddy Sign Guy on Facebook, said, what was the longest entrance that you've ever seen on a wrestling show, and how long did it take for Dice to get into the ring that night? Well, Mr. Sign Guy, you just answered the question yourself, and you are correct. And how could you not be correct? Now, for all of you not in the know, he is speaking about Dice. He is talking about Dice Man Ronnie Vegas. Now, Dice Man Ronnie Vegas is a great talent, a great guy. He's from Chicago. He has made appearances for WWE and WWF, WCW in the past, in the 80s and 90s. And he wrestled all over the Midwest and was a staple in Indiana when I was breaking into the business. And he helped me a lot, showed me a lot of things, had a hand in my training, and was just he was a really good guy, right? He had a dry sense of humor, though. But if you know, which I like, I enjoy that, right? And I did a few road trips with Dice, went to a few different places throughout Indiana and the Midwest, went up to Chicago to his place at a show he had a hand in helping book some talent for, and worked on a couple occasions. So, you know, and just recently saw Dice, here last year for the first time in several years. And man, it was great seeing him and catching up with him for a minute. And I regret right now, because now here I am, I'm living in North Carolina, that when I saw him last year, I didn't have my picture taken with him because we go back so far. But it was one of those deals where we saw each other, we talked for a bit, we were at a show, things were getting ready to take off. We're like, hey, we'll catch up later. And we didn't cross paths the rest of the night, unfortunately. So it was one of those things. So yes, Dice Man Ronnie Vegas, I would say, would have to be the longest entrance I have ever seen. I don't have a specific time, a specific date. You could take your pick, pretty much. He would come out, and as his music, he would use "Don't Stop the Rock" by Freestyle. Now, look that song up. It's a catchy little number, for sure, and it's about a 6 or 7 minute song, I believe. Now, there are times, literally, and I believe JT Branham commented on this question, and he verified kind of my memories here. There are times that Dice would let that song play, I swear, 2 or 3 times before he would come out. That is no joke. I'm saying I would guess it would be 10 minutes or so before he would even come out the curtain. So yes, Dice Man Ronnie Vegas, or any variation of him and the High Rollers. That was his stable and tag team he had at the time. Had the longest entrance I have ever seen at a wrestling show. Man, I miss those guys. Hey, make sure you visit DaveDynasty.com. That is your central hub for everything within the world of the Dave Dynasty Show. From there, you can find links to follow us on all of our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course YouTube, which you will want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have lots of classic wrestling every episode of the podcast and other exclusive features there. While you're at DaveDynasty.com, check out the links to help financially support the show. That is how we keep this free every week. You can go to ProWrestlingTees.com/The Dave Dynasty and buy a shirt to help us out. PayPal.me/The Dave Dynasty to make a one-time financial contribution. Patreon.com/The Dave Dynasty to make ongoing monthly contributions. Or you can click our affiliate links for Amazon.com and HighSpots.com. No additional charge to you, but it helps us out. Thank you for your support, and check out DaveDynasty.com. Complete your experience with The Dave Dynasty Show.
Since 2001, drug companies dumped 1 billion opioid pills in West Virginia, causing over 3,000 overdose deaths and thousands of babies born addicted by no fault of their own. I'm attorney Stephen New. If you're the grandparent or guardian of a child born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, call me. I'll help you seek just compensation.
Call the law offices of Stephen P. New at 1-844-BAD-PILLS before time runs out.
If you are looking for the best books, DVDs, and posters on classic wrestling nostalgia, then you want to visit crowbarpress.com. There are literally dozens of titles there, including biographies of the likes of Bruiser Brody, Ole Anderson, Ivan Koloff, and of course, Dick the Bruiser, as we've spoke about here on the Dave Dynasty Show. You want to visit crowbarpress.com for all of your classic wrestling nostalgia needs. Again, that is crowbarpress.com. And then finally, Drew Murphy off of Facebook said, in your opinion, why was the Indiana territory not covered by the Apter mags in the Boom 83 through 87 period? I was a kid at the time and really didn't know about Bruiser's promotion until maybe 15 years ago. Portland was still getting press at that time, but wasn't doing any better. Well, because, Drew, let me tell you how it is. The time period you're talking about, 83 to 87, the WWA was, for the most part, had dropped a lot in prominence. Now, they were still drawing pretty, decent crowds for the area and whatnot, but they weren't really touring a whole lot. They have kind of aged out their promotion. A lot of the wrestlers had gained in age, and this was right at that time period where it was getting ready to move to Toledo, Ohio, and become Bruiser Bedlam. So during this time, the magazines were covering the promotions that were really going strong, were really prominent, but most importantly, the Aftermax have always covered the promotions that worked with them the most. Now, what I mean by that is to save on money. The Aftermags, they led you to believe they always had these correspondents and these photographers all over the place, and that's not true. They had people that were quote-unquote correspondents and such, but they were sending stuff to the magazine. These were just people. These weren't on the payroll. They weren't sending people for paying travel expenses. These were people that were just submitting stuff. And so the people that were submitting were, they could easily, the magazines, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the Wrestler, so on and so forth, could easily get stuff in New York. Right? That's where their offices were. So, of course, WWE, WWF at the time, WWF prior to that, was getting a lot of coverage because that they were close. They could see those. Memphis was getting a lot of coverage because Jerry Lawler had a good relationship with Bill Apter. There was lots of stuff being sent to him. There was a lot of correspondence and relationship there. I'm guessing you're saying Portland got a lot of press. I would guess it's the same deal. Don Owens had a good relationship probably with Bill Apter. Had a lot of history there. A lot of guys, like Roddy Piper, things like that had connections that still had allegiance to Ron Owens. And were probably still helping coordinate that go-between and that coverage there for them. Bruiser I don't think Bruiser, one of the biggest gripes, and I would agree on Bruiser, is he didn't have a lot of forward thinking, right? He was very set in his ways and how he promoted and how he conducted his business. To be fair, that was highly successful and worked for a long, long time. Up until the very end, Dick the Bruiser was a draw. He himself. But he always thought his guys, the Moose Cholak, the Bobo Brazil, so on and so forth, a lot of these guys were always going to be the thing that him and them could outdraw. We look back to 1982 when Bruiser was struggling a little bit, which, like you say, is right at the beginning of this period you're talking. Bruiser was struggling a little bit, so he went to Jerry Jarrett to get a little assistance, and they co-promoted some shows in Indiana until Jerry Jarrett come to find out that Dick the Bruiser was changing the cards around and putting himself in the main event against Kamala, which Kamala was a young, very hot star for Memphis at that time, and he was, more importantly, Bruiser was going over Kamala, and usually in a rather quick fashion. So essentially what Bruiser was doing was he was undermining, right, the thing for himself. Now, of course, we can say Bruiser was trying to keep himself in his area strong by doing so. You can argue this and that all you want, but that's the main reason. The promotions that still had a lot of prominence, the promotions, most importantly, that had a good relationship with Bill Apter and those magazines were the ones that got the coverage. Bill Apter had to have material. The people that made the effort and consistently sent stuff in, they got the coverage. And also in the Midwest, there was a lot of local magazines. Now, by this time, some of them were on the decline, and some of these magazines weren't as around as prominent. But there was, wrestling news, all the Norm Keizer magazines and stuff over the years were in this area, right? They were in the Midwest area, covered these a lot, and they had a lot of correspondence, the John Lawsons and all the guys from Minneapolis and so on and so forth that would submit stuff to those magazines and contribute and write. Dave Drayson in Detroit, all these guys really worked with these magazines, the Norm Keizer magazines, a lot more. So you saw Midwest promotions featured more in those because it just worked, right? Things were very regional then, and that includes the magazines. And while the magazines had nationwide distribution, the material they were producing, it was a lot harder to do it nationwide. They faked it a lot because people were sending stuff in. But if you look at the stories, I mean, and the stories are one thing because they just wrote the stories, right? They just made the stories up, and none of that was legit stuff. So Apter and his staff could do that, but they needed pictures, right? They needed pictures to formulate these stories around, more or less, and store pictures to, the covers and the centerfolds is what sold these things more than anything. So if you look at the covers at that time, through all time at Pro Wrestling Illustrated, it was very heavy in the Northeast in the McMahon's stuff. There was some Memphis stuff, but that was because Lawler had a good relationship. Once Crockett became more prominent, it was all Crockett. Those are the people that contributed and worked with Bill Apter, because Dusty Rhodes had a good relationship with Bill Apter. So that's why. That's why you saw those kind of things on and getting coverage, and not so much for the Indianapolis territory, the WWA, and to be in the rankings and the results. Someone had to submit those things, right? I've been there as promoting shows in the past and working with a lot of companies. That's how you get in those rankings, and that's how you get in the results. You just have somebody that sends them, right? That submits them. They tabulates that or whatever, and sends it to them. So that's, if nobody's sending it, then it's not getting printed. So there you go. That's all we're going to answer for the questions for today. Now let's get on to our contest and our giveaway. It is very, very cool. We have a copy of New Jack's book. It is the book called New Jack, Memoir of a Pro Wrestling Extremist, written by New Jack and Jason Norman. This was out, it's published by McFarlane. Just came out here recently, actually. I believe, this year. But the good thing is, right, this book right now is more relevant than anything, correct? Because New Jack episode just aired on the Dark Side of the Ring, and it has been, everybody's got an opinion, right? People are calling New Jack names, and on one extreme, people are saying, wow, what a fascinating character. You don't have characters like that anymore in the business. Well, if you want to formulate a true opinion, read New Jack's book. Again, it's called New Jack, Memoir of a Pro Wrestling Extremist. And I have a copy right here, straight from McFarlane Publishers, McFarlane Books, to give away on the Dave Dynasty Show. They were kind enough to send me a copy to give out to you, the listeners. And here's what you have to do. This episode is getting ready to be released, and it'll be in the notes. When I release this, I will put the initial post on Facebook, and I will put an initial tweet on Twitter. All you have to do are 3 things. You like the tweet, or like the post. You share the tweet, or retweet the tweet, or share the post on Facebook, and then make sure you like the Dave Dynasty Show page, or you follow us on Twitter. So all you have to do, like, share, follow. You can do it on Facebook. You can do it on Twitter. The deal is this. If you do it on both, then you have double the entries into this contest. We are going to run this contest for a week, right? I'm going to let this open up, actually not a full week. We're going to run it to Saturday, April 11th. So if you're listening to this in the future and it is past April 11th, 2020, you're just out of luck. So at the conclusion of Saturday, April 11th, so at 11:59 p.m. Saturday, April 11th, this will close out. I will take all the people from Facebook that liked, shared, and followed. I will take all the people on Twitter that retweeted, and followed. I will mix them all up, and I will pick a winner, and I will send them a free copy of New Jack's book. So there you have it. That's all you got to do. So thank you for listening. Make sure you do those things. Enter for the book. Make sure you get with me and submit some questions so that we can answer your questions on future episodes. That helps spurn these topics for me to discuss and stuff that I maybe wouldn't come to mind otherwise. So make sure you do that. And until next time that I come to you and fill your ears with some wrestling goodness, I am Dave Dynasty. This is the Dave Dynasty Show. Be good, be safe, keep on growing, and most importantly, right now, stay at home.